Hey, I'm Charles with Rocky Mountain ATV MC. In this video, we're going to show you how to install the All Balls Easy Trail Boot Kit on your side-by-side or ATV. The All Balls Easy Trail Boot is a super unique product from these guys, and it allows you to change out the CV boot while you're on the trail without having to disassemble the CV axle. So it's really cool stuff. I know you're thinking there's no way that the small end of the boot's going to stretch over this cone, but it does, and this is actually tough enough to be a permanent repair. Each kit comes with enough stuff to repair an inner or outer CV boot. You can just flip that thing around. And then as far as fitment goes, these are going to work for your ATVs and side-by-sides. We're going to install one on our XP4 1000. This one takes the XL boot. There's a standard size as well, and then each boot has a couple options for fitment, and you can trim off extra material. But if you're still not sure which one is going to fit your machine, type in your year, make, and model into our website, and that's going to let you know if it's going to work. So with all that being said, let's get started. The whole point of the Easy Trail Boot is to get this done on the trail. That way you prevent dirt from entering that CV joint and damaging it. So first we're going to talk about the necessary stuff to do this on the trail, and then we're going to talk about stuff that is nice to have. Maybe you have this other stuff at camp and want to drive your machine back there to get the job done. So in either case, the stuff necessary for the trail, you need your rubber gloves, safety glasses, some rags, you need the jack. We have the Tusk extendable lug nut wrench. We've got a knife, side cutters, needle nose pliers, and a variety of sockets, including ones for our lug nuts. We've got one for the CV axle and for those ball joints. Now, the stuff that's nice to have would be a ratchet, hammer. You've got your CV banding tool along with that cutter, and then also a pry bar. Now, like it says in the name, this stuff is meant to be easy, so let's go ahead and get started. No matter what machine you're doing this on, first thing you need to do is gain access to the CV axle. Now we're working on a 2019 Polaris XP4 1000, and the steps will look pretty similar for most machines, but you can always reference your model specific service manual for any differences. So we're going to start out by loosening up these lug nuts. Then we're going to raise the machine with our jack, and we have the luxury of using a jack stand with that. And don't forget to apply your parking brake and chock the wheels. But if you're out on the trail and have to lift your machine up, then just make sure it's securely and safely supported. Then we'll go ahead and remove the wheel. Now we're going to remove this axle nut. And I'm just going to have an assistant hold the brake while I loosen this nut up. Then we'll remove the 2 bolts on the brake caliper and hang it from a bungee cord or safety wire. Now we're going to remove that wheel hub. And on this machine, it's going to be easiest to remove this complete bearing carrier. So we just need to disconnect our tie rod end and the 2 ball joints. Once you have access to the CV axle, it's not a bad idea to wipe some of the dirt and grime away. Just make sure you don't get any in that torn boot. Now obviously, our CV axle, it's in good condition, the boot's not torn, but we still want to show you guys how to do this. So first thing you're going to do is remove both bands, and then we're just going to cut the boot completely off. With that old CV boot out of the way, you can go ahead and clean this joint up. Try to wipe away any dirt or grime that might have got in there. Now if you have a little bit of contact cleaner with you, or if you're doing this back at camp, I would use a little contact cleaner on a rag and clean this surface where the boot is going to clamp on. That way once you have it clamped, it's less likely to slip off. To get this installed, you want to make sure you have your boot installed the right way onto the cone. So the cone just sits over the end of the CV axle, and since we're doing an outboard boot, we'll have this small diameter going on the cone first. But if you're doing an inboard boot, make sure the big end goes on first. This is where a lot of people get hung up. Main thing with this is you need to use a lot of lube on this cone. That's going to make that boot slip on easy. Now we're going to slide the cone over the end of the CV axle. If you have a really short axle, you can stick a block of wood down in here to prevent how far this goes on. We're just going to slide that over and finish pressing the boot on. So this is your CV grease pack, and you never want to use more than what's in this. This is enough to do one boot. So we're going to open this up. We're going to get some fresh grease on that joint. So once you have that packed in there, you can squeeze the rest of the packet inside the boot. Now that we have the grease in, I'm just going to clean up the sealing surfaces of both the boot and the axle. That way when we clamp it down, it's less likely to pop off. So we'll go ahead and slide the boot into place. Now you'll notice on here, you have a couple different diameters. So if you have a smaller CV axle, you might be going to this smaller diameter and then just trimming off the extra rubber on the larger diameter. And for me, I just really want to make sure everything's clean. So I'm going to pop the lip up on that boot, make sure it stays in place, but I'm just going to go around this one last time, make sure there's no grease in between the boot and that joint. Now we're going to unloop this band so there's only one loop going around, and then when we install this, our axle, it's going to be turning clockwise as we look at it. So when we tighten this down, we're going to bend this end backwards, and that's exactly how we want it positioned. And that way, if anything hits this end, it doesn't catch on it and try to rip it off. And we're just going to make sure this is sitting in the groove, and I'm just going to hold it somewhat tight. Then we're going to use our banding tool to tighten the clamp down. Once you have that band tight, we're going to go ahead and take the tool and flip the band over. And I'm going to use the cutters, trim the end of the band off and remove the tool. Then you can use some pliers and bend those two ears over to hold that tab down. But before I do that, I'm just going to use my hammer and lightly tap on the corner of this band. Make sure that's settled down all the way. You know, and the whole thing with this, you're just getting the band tight enough that this boot isn't going to come off. Don't sit there and crank on the tool to where it actually cuts that new boot. And then I'm going to trim the end of this band off so there's maybe a ½ an inch left. And we can trim off those sharp corners too. Now we can do the same steps for the small end of the boot. There is one additional thing we're going to do. And sometimes when you press this on, some air can get trapped in here. So we're going to equalize the pressure, just press up on this, and let some air pass through. So now that that's evened out, we're going to clean this up the same way we did for the outside. Now one last tip with this is you notice there was 2 notches on this axle. We just went a little past the notch this is going to fit on best, and then we're sliding it back until the little rubber ring inside the boot rests in the notch. Now that we have the CV boot installed, we can go ahead and assemble everything in the reverse order we took it apart. Just make sure you reference your model specific service manual for any specific torque specs. Then as we go together, we're making sure that we use a new cotter pin. We'll go ahead and snug these lug nuts down. Once the jack is down, we can do the final torquing on these. That's all there is to installing the All Balls Easy Trail boot. This thing is a lot more convenient than having to pack a complete axle with you. It's a little more compact, and you can even buy those replacement boots so you can carry several different boots with you in case something happens. Now, if you need this kit, it's available on our website. Go check that out. Again, there's multiple sizes, so make sure you're getting the correct ones. Now, with this, if you do need to know how to change out the complete CV axle on your machine, check out our other how-to videos and subscribe to our channel. Thanks for watching.